What if winning someone's heart wasn't just about being honest, kind, and yourself? What if, deep down, admiration and desire didn't come from obvious goodness, but from perceived power, silent confidence, emotional intelligence, and a kind of mystery that never gives it all away? What if attraction, at its core, doesn't reward the noblest soul, but the one who best understands human nature? She's got options. A lot of them. Guys who listen, compliment her, take her out. Some go out of their way, others compete for her attention. They all think they're offering something special: security, humor, passion, protection. But here's what most don't get. When a woman has plenty to choose from, she doesn't pick the most available one. She doesn't go for the most polite or the one who wants her the most. She chooses the one who makes her feel like being with him would be a privilege, not a favor. It sounds harsh, but it's real. And if you don't want to be swept away by rejection after rejection, you need to see the game for what it is. Machiavelli understood this. In a world where everyone is pretending to be virtuous, the one who wins is the one who knows how to play with appearances. In a time where being a good guy has become more of a strategy than a true moral value, only the genuinely sharp stand out, without begging for it. There's something painfully eye-opening about realizing you weren't rejected because you lacked feelings, but because you were too easy. Total devotion, when it's given too soon, kills desire. Being an open book doesn't always build trust. It can just make you predictable. Love, that emotion we like to dress up as noble and pure, often follows the rules of power, perception, and rarity. In other words, desire doesn't play by moral rules. It plays by the rules of the game. And if you want to be chosen, you have to know how to play. Machiavelli, in The Prince, wasn't talking about romantic love. But his insights on power, fear, image, and admiration apply almost surgically to modern relationships. Because every attraction involves a balance of forces. Not necessarily domination, but definitely attention. A woman who has many suitors isn't looking for one more. She's looking for the one who stands out. And the one who stands out isn't the most obedient. It's the one who, without promising anything, makes her feel like being with him would be an experience, unique, unpredictable, maybe even a little dangerous. The mistake most guys make is confusing niceness with attraction. They think that being kind, available, and upfront from the start will earn them love. But this isn't about not being good, it's about being strategic. Virtue without strength is invisible. Kindness without mystery becomes boring. Devotion without tension doesn't spark anything. History is full of good men who were overlooked by women who said they were looking for exactly that. A good man. But because perception often weighs more than essence. Because desire doesn't always follow logic. Because keeping interest alive requires friction. And that's where the Machiavellian steps in. Not the sleazy manipulator or the emotionless player, but the man who understands the emotional psychology of attraction. The one who doesn't show all his cards on the first date. The one who appears and disappears with purpose. The one who knows when to speak and when to stay silent. Who takes care of his image but isn't a slave to it. Who knows that even vulnerability, to be attractive, needs to be used wisely. That man doesn't beg. He doesn't chase validation. He doesn't compete with others. He sets himself apart. Because he's not trying to be the favorite in a poll. He's trying to be the only one who sparks a new question in her mind. What is it about him that no one else has? And that question, that tiny spark of curiosity, is more powerful than 1,000 sweet texts or a dozen mistimed flowers. But there's something deeper. The true Machiavellian isn't just strategic on the outside. He has power over himself. He doesn't drown in his own emotions. He doesn't lose himself in fantasies. He doesn't tie his worth to being validated by one woman. Because, this is key, if you don't choose yourself first, you'll hardly ever be truly chosen by someone else. That's the paradox. The more desperate you are to be picked, the less attractive you become. True power comes from emotional self-sufficiency. Not isolation, but knowing your worth without needing anyone to prove it to you. Being chosen out of many isn't about luck or destiny. It's the result of understanding the psychology of desire. And that psychology isn't fair. It isn't logical. It isn't moral. But it's real. And while so many keep thinking that being intense is the same as being brave, or that showing everything means being honest, the Machiavellian walks past those traps with quiet elegance. Not because he doesn't feel, but because he knows that feeling something doesn't always mean you should act on it. That love is not an excuse to lose your self-respect, and that being forgotten by someone you gave everything to is a slow kind of death. No, this isn't about playing with someone else's feelings. It's about not being a victim of your own ignorance. It's about not handing yourself over like a gift to someone who hasn't proven they deserve it. It's about stopping the belief that the more you insist, the more you'll be valued. Insistence doesn't create desire. Purposeful absence does. Forced waiting wears people out. Planned mystery turns up the heat. Being chosen shouldn't be a goal. It should be a consequence. And to make that happen, sometimes you have to be less of a poet and more of a strategist. It might not be romantic, but it's true. If you don't want to be just another one in the crowd, don't act like everyone else. Build your power. Control your impulses. Own your presence. And above all, stop begging to be chosen. Because only when you stop asking to be loved, do you start becoming someone they simply can't ignore. Being chosen when there's competition isn't about luck or fate, much less about obvious merit. Because in the real world, love isn't handed out fairly, and attention doesn't always go to the one who gives the most. You either feel it or you don't. And what someone feels doesn't just depend on what you give, it often depends, more than anything else, on how desirable you make what you offer. This is where common sense crashes into emotional reality. We're taught that if you give your all, you'll be loved. But real life teaches us something different. The one who gives too much too soon is often met with appreciation, but not desire. Human nature doesn't always go for what's easy. In fact, easy often gets boring. Desire feeds on mystery, and mystery needs a kind of deliberate silence. Not the kind of silence that ignores, but the kind that observes. The kind that doesn't rush to respond, because it knows that every second of waiting creates tension. And tension is the oxygen of attraction. She doesn't want the one who needs her most. She wants the one who, even while wanting her, doesn't lose his center. The one who looks at her with depth, but not with desperation. The one who could lose her and still remain whole. That's the key. The man who shows he can live without her but chooses to be there, not out of need, but out of choice, is the one who sparks that powerful mix of safety and uncertainty that creates real magnetism. Machiavelli once said it's better to be feared than loved, if you can't be both. In emotional terms, that doesn't mean you scare anyone. It means you maintain the sense that you're not easily replaceable, that your absence would be felt, that your value isn't in how much you give, but in how much meaning your presence holds. That's not arrogance. That's conscious presence. It's knowing your time, your attention, your body, your soul, they're not on sale. You're not a clearance rack. You're a rare piece, and only those with eyes to appreciate the rare will see your worth. Most men lose a woman's respect through overavailability, and it's usually slow, almost invisible. At first, she smiles. She thanks you. She gladly receives every message, every gesture, every word. But something inside her, something not rational but instinctive, starts to whisper, "This is too easy. This isn't going anywhere. This doesn't challenge me." And that's when admiration fades. And with it, desire. Because where there's no tension, there's no spark. And where everything is already given, there's nothing left to chase. Is it fair? Is it real? Absolutely. Be the man who chooses, not the one who begs. The man who walks away when he's not valued, not with resentment, but with dignity. The man who isn't desperate for a reply, because he's already busy building his own life. That man creates something compliments can't buy, curiosity. And curiosity is the root of desire. It's the crack where interest slips in. It's the question with no answer that lingers after a well-placed silence. There's huge power in emotional moderation. Not in suppressing what you feel, but in knowing when to express it. Because unfiltered emotion, urgency, non-stop intensity, they can become overwhelming. And when a woman feels emotionally flooded by something she never asked for, she pulls away, not because she doesn't like you, but because it feels like your entire world revolves around her. And that doesn't flatter her. It pressures her. It takes away her air. The real art is in giving space. In not demanding. In offering without pleading. In walking away with grace if you're not met halfway. Because when you leave without drama, without guilt-tripping, without trying to punish someone for not choosing you, part of you stays behind. A doubt. An echo. A quiet, What if that can linger for weeks, months, even years? While the guy who begged, who chased, who spilled himself out in every unanswered message, he fades fast. Because predictable doesn't leave a mark. The Machiavellian doesn't care about being liked by everyone. He cares about being respected by the ones who actually matter. He's not collecting approvals, he's making impact. And impact comes from being different, not in a flashy way, but in a strategically authentic way. By not following the same tired script, always being available, showing everything from day one, confusing honesty with full-on emotional exposure. There's real beauty in self-control, in mastering your impulses, in holding back just enough to keep some mystery, in building a presence that isn't based on what you say, but what you suggest. It's not about playing games. It's about understanding that even the truth, when shown too soon or too often, can lose its value. That depth needs time. And when a woman sees that you're not in a rush, she starts to wonder why. And that question, that curiosity, can become stronger than any heartfelt confession. Love that grows from admiration lasts longer. And to be admired, it's not enough to just be good, you have to be solid. You have to show you can say no with kindness. That you can walk away without yelling. That you can live without her, even if you love having her around. That balance, that rare mix of desire and self-possession, is what makes one man stand out among many. And if you haven't been chosen yet, it's not because you're not enough. Maybe it's because you've been showing too much, too soon, with too little mystery. You don't need to change who you are, just how you offer yourself. You're not trying to convince anyone. You're trying to resonate. And to resonate, you need space, stillness, silence. It's not about being liked by everyone. It's about being seen as unforgettable by someone. Becoming that man takes inner work. It means knowing yourself, mastering yourself, valuing yourself. It's not a quick fix. It's a transformation. Because in the end, it's not just about being chosen by her. It's about choosing yourself first. And when that happens, something shifts. She notices. She doesn't know why, but she starts to look at you differently. And in that moment, you're no longer just one more option. You're the one who, without begging, without boasting, without fighting for it, made being chosen by you feel like the only choice that ever made sense. And so, in the end, it's not about winning her. That whole idea of winning someone, like it's a trophy or a race, is just an exhausting illusion that often turns us into someone we're not. What's really at stake isn't getting her, it's staying grounded enough not to lose yourself in the process. Because the strongest connections aren't built from need, but from inner abundance. From that place where you can look someone in the eye and say, I don't need you to live, but with you, life feels more alive. Machiavelli understood that every human relationship, even the most intimate, is shaped by power. But not in a tyrannical way. It's a subtle kind of power, emotional, quiet, almost invisible. And the one who holds it isn't the one who controls the other person. It's the one who has control over himself. The one who doesn't panic. The one who doesn't beg for affection like it's crumbs from a table. The one who's so full of himself, not in arrogance, but in peace, that he doesn't chase anything. Because what's meant for him will find him. The most painful and most revealing paradox is this. The more you shrink yourself to be liked, the less memorable you become. But the more you stay true to yourself, even if it means not being chosen, the more unforgettable your presence becomes. There's something deeply attractive about someone who doesn't sell out, who doesn't lower himself, who doesn't put on a show just to be loved. That person, even if not picked right away, ends up being the one they can't forget. Now, this doesn't mean you need to build a wall around your heart or play dumb games. It simply means living from such a clear, honest place that any woman who crosses paths with you can't help but wonder what lies behind that quiet confidence. Because the men who radiate that kind of calm, who feel whole regardless of how things play out, are the ones who, sooner or later, become turning points in the lives of the women who meet them. Maybe she has options. Maybe others have more charm, more looks, more money, more superficial charisma. But there's one thing no one else can have if you cultivate it genuinely: your depth. Your inner world. The way you see life. The way you hold space. The way you remain steady even when the future feels uncertain. And that, while invisible at first, leaves a mark. Remember this: not all connections happen instantly. Some gazes take time to be understood. Some souls only reveal themselves when no one's expecting anything. That's why the real strategy isn't to push, or rush, or chase. The real strategy is to plant without anxiety, nurture without urgency, and let time show who had real roots. When a woman realizes she can count on you, but doesn't completely have you. When she senses that your affection isn't handed out like candy, but is rare and valuable. When she feels there's fire behind your calm, but a fire that doesn't burn for just anyone. She starts to see you differently. She begins to respect you. And where there's respect, there can be desire. But where there's only need, there's usually pity or emotional obligation. And no one wants to love out of guilt. You become someone who leaves a mark not by what you do, but by how you do it. By how you walk away when you're not valued. By how you listen more than you talk. By how you don't collapse in the face of indifference, because your worth doesn't depend on someone else's validation. That moves people. That provokes curiosity. That changes the dynamic. In a world where most people are shouting for attention, quiet confidence is a revolutionary act. And in the middle of all that noise, she, whether she admits it or not, is hoping to meet someone who doesn't get dragged into the chaos. Someone who isn't just another option, but a presence that makes her redefine what connection really means. And that kind of presence doesn't come from pretending to be someone else. It comes from revealing the strongest part of yourself, your ability to stand tall even when desire tempts you to kneel. The power to be chosen doesn't lie in winning her love, it lies in being worthy of it even if it never arrives. Because the man who's worthy of love, deep down in his peace, his dignity, his sense of self, he's not afraid to lose. And that is the most magnetic force there is. The man who isn't afraid of losing a woman because he's already found himself. That man has an energy that can't be copied. He might not say the sweetest words or have the most dramatic gestures, but he's got something far more rare. A truth that doesn't need to persuade, a presence that doesn't need to be decorated, a heart that beats without begging. Maybe she'll choose someone else. Maybe she won't see what you see. Maybe she'll take a different path. But if you've stayed true to who you are, if you haven't let anxiety make you disappear, if you haven't betrayed yourself out of desperation, then nothing has been wasted. Because even if she doesn't choose you, something inside you has grown. And when someone new walks into your life, you won't show up from lack. You'll show up from fullness. Not from a void that needs to be filled, but from an abundance that's ready to be shared, not begged for. And if one day she comes back, if she crosses the distance and sees you with new eyes, it won't be because you chased her. It'll be because you were unforgettable. Because your absence spoke volumes. Because your dignity echoed. Because the space you left wasn't punishment, it was a mirror. That is the real victory. Not having someone, but never having lost yourself for anyone. Walking strong, even when your heart shook. Loving deeply without becoming a beggar. Wanting someone without falling to your knees. And on that path, with or without her, you will have won the only thing that truly matters. Your self-respect. And that self-respect, when nurtured with strength and peace, is what, in the end, makes you the one who gets chosen. Not just by her, but by life itself. What if true strength wasn't about winning hearts, but about not losing yours while trying? We live in a world that rewards speed, instant wins, and surface-level impact, where being wanted often seems more important than being whole. In that kind of environment, many people jump into the game of love like it's a competition, as if being chosen validates their worth. But what if being willing to walk away is actually what makes you unforgettable? What if the most irresistible thing is the one that doesn't beg, doesn't kneel, doesn't give itself away unconditionally to the uncertainty of affection? Behind every story where someone wasn't chosen, there's usually a false belief hiding in the background that we should have done more. Been more available, more charming, more persistent. But that mindset turns love into a kind of emotional marketplace. We don't love to be seen, we love to share who we already are. And when we're desperate to please, we end up creating a sugar-coated version of ourselves that doesn't captivate, it waters down our truth. What feels like rejection isn't always rejection. Sometimes it's the space life gives you to discover how worthy you are even when you're not chosen. Because dignity doesn't show up when everything goes your way. It shows up when desire burns, and you still choose not to humiliate yourself. It's easy to be strong when nothing's at stake. The real test is staying grounded when your heart's shaking, when someone's gaze makes you question your worth, when no answer comes, and still, you refuse to beg. A lot of people confuse pride with emotional distance, but this isn't about closing your heart. It's about protecting what lives there, about not giving it away carelessly, about not letting your need to be seen make you invisible to yourself. Because in the end, it's not the person who gives the most that stays, it's the one who shows up with the most truth. And truth is felt. It doesn't need dressing up, strategies, or games. Some men lose themselves trying to be liked. They disappear in their efforts to please. Every over-the-top gesture, every message forced to create connection, every attempt to stand out from the rest, it all builds an image, not a bond. Sure, the other person might see you, but they're not seeing you. And even if they choose you, they're not choosing you. They're choosing the version you made up to win approval. Love isn't something you win like a battle. It's something you inspire. And you inspire it when the other person sees you won't betray yourself just to get their attention. That your love isn't up for negotiation. That you can offer it freely, but you won't empty yourself just to get a response. That kind of self-respect, that inner steadiness, that calm confidence that doesn't shake with every outside reaction. It's magnetic. Not flashy, not loud. But lasting. It sticks. And over time, it echoes louder than any fleeting charm. When a woman has options, she doesn't always go for the one who chased her the hardest. Sometimes, she remembers the one who stepped back at the right time. The one who said goodbye with respect when he wasn't valued. The one who didn't demand, but also didn't settle for crumbs. Because in that quiet move, there's something we all long for. To feel that the other person chooses themselves first. That they're not willing to disappear just to be liked. That they love themselves enough not to force love from someone else. Yes, it might hurt at first. Your pride might push you to act, to send another message, to keep trying. But that's the trap. Because the more you offer from a place of urgency, the more you lose your center. And the other person, whether they say it or not, can feel that. They pull away. Because deep down, we all know that someone who doesn't respect themselves will eventually demand love like it's owed. And no one wants to love out of obligation. Power, the kind Machiavelli saw not as tyranny but as quiet influence, doesn't come from controlling others. It comes from self-control. From knowing when to step back. From keeping your cool when your ego wants to lash out. From holding your silence when your emotions are screaming to beg. That steady strength, that refusal to bend to rejection, leaves a mark. Maybe not right away. Maybe not obviously. But it sticks. And it's unforgettable. This isn't about playing games. It's not about pretending you don't care. It's about knowing your worth isn't tied to being chosen. It's about holding on to your integrity when you're not. Because real love can only grow in a place where there's respect. And there can't be respect if you don't have it for yourself. Sometimes, the one who looks like they lost is actually the one who won. Because they kept their voice, their fire, their dignity. Because they didn't trade their soul for a chance to be liked. Because they'd rather have the silence of self-respect than the company that makes them beg. And that kind of person, though they may not get picked first, is the one people go looking for when everything else falls apart. Because when the superficial fades, what's real becomes urgent. You get to decide who you are in love. The one who begs, who competes, who bends until they disappear, or the one who stands tall, even while loving. The one who doesn't deny their feelings, but also doesn't let those feelings make them forget their worth. The one who risks losing, but never loses themselves in the process. And if one day you run into that woman again, the one who once had many options, you might notice something different in yourself. That you're no longer waiting to be chosen. That if she comes back, great. But if not, you're still standing. Not because you're cold, but because you've grown. Not because you lack love, but because you've gained too much respect for your own story. Because the most beautiful thing about loving without losing yourself is that in the end, it doesn't matter who stays. You stay. Whole, honest, alive. And with that, you already have everything.